I like to share with you guys how, my story, how Loving came to be, how I co-founded the company, a little bit of my background, and, and everything in between. So here we go. So the first thing I'm going to share some of the things we've accomplished throughout the years. We were founded in 2008. So we're about 12 years old. We're about to hit our teenage years. So that's a good sign. We have, we didn't imagine, when I say we, I mean my business partner, Ken, and I, we didn't imagine that we were going to be able to do the things that we have done. As an example, we completely have generated over $300 million for local florists in North America in our lifetime. We've done this by being 100% bootstrapped. For those of you who don't know, bootstrap, it means basically we've done it on our own. We just had literally $900 in our pocket. We've never borrowed any money from any banks, or we've never borrowed, any investments.
Join the crowd. Join the crowd. I did same thing.
Exactly. It's just been a sweat blood.
And it's very hard.
Absolutely. We received no help. We were just, it was just our grit, our passion, and you guys, right? And the trust that some of our earlier shops had in us to keep it, to keep this train moving, right? So we, 1 year, no, not 1 year, like about 9 months into forming of the company, I also turned down a 6-figure salary. I turned down a $100,000 job while making $0. We were not getting paid yet. We were not making any money, simply because I believed into what we were doing. And the gist of that story is I didn't tell my wife that was happening at the time. I just kind of kept that to myself. It worked out, so we joke around it now, but that actually happened. And to make matters even more, to take the risk, to make the risk even greater, I had, we formed the company in January 14, 2008, and my first son was born February 23rd. So literally a month later, I was a dad, taking chances, trying to get this thing to work. This thing had to work, or else, it wasn't going to be pretty. So we have impacted over 5 million people in terms of customers and recipients, 2,500,000 customers and 2,500,000 recipients. We are, like I said, we were completely bootstrapped. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and just, now that I've set that up, let you guys know a little bit of my background. So I was, I'm the guy there with the green jacket. I was 11 years old. I was born and raised up until I was 10 years old in the Dominican Republic. I came here as an immigrant. My parents are both immigrants. They try to follow the American dream. And what they did for a living, what we did in order to feed ourselves was we owned a bodega in Brooklyn, New York. A bodega is a small grocery store. That's what we call it in the Northeast, in the corner of McGinnis Boulevard in Brooklyn. So my dad was an entrepreneur. I think that's where I got the DNA from, obviously. He those were long hours. There were, he would wake up at 6 a.m., be at the store at 7, and close the store at 10 o'clock at night. There were long hours. It was tough work. You would stand on your feet all day. We had a family of, there were 7 of us. So there was my mom, my dad, and 5 other kids. I was the oldest, so I had most of the chores. My dad used to complain. I never thought I was gonna use this information in the future, because at the time I really hated that, because my dad used to complain and vent basically about the rough day he had, and he would complain about, cash flow or vendor problems or prices going up, or, your typical small business sort of run-of-the-mill issues that all businesses have, especially when it's like a small business where you have either a grocery store or some sort of retail that is not in a highly populated area, right? And it was a tough life. I mean, I couldn't believe, you know, that I'm old. Now that I'm older, I understand this, but I remember being, my mom took me to the police station, and we were just looking at pictures, you know, a giant book of pictures of people. And I was just wondering, why are we looking for, you know, people? You know where I'm going with this, right? They were actually, I was looking at mugshots because my parents just got robbed. That happened like 4 times in a 15-year window. And I was too young to understand any of that. My parents basically sheltered me from all that stuff, but like it was real. And this was Brooklyn in the late 80s and 90s. This is not Brooklyn now where everything is cool and trendy. This is like really rough time. So with that said, that's my background. I'm going to skip a whole bunch of years to 2004, because that's where I met Ken Garland, my business partner. We met at, I got a job at a bank called BNP Paribas. They're France's largest bank. This place was really a toxic environment. I don't even want to talk a lot about this because I literally have, I think, PTSD from it. It was terrible. It basically, you literally had to ask permission to go to the restroom. And it was just a horrible work environment. But you know what happens when you go through a rough time with other people and they're also going through a rough time? You build a brotherhood, right? You build a camaraderie. You become closer because, you know, hey man, I know I suffer and I know you suffer. So we basically build that brotherhood, you know? And, but one day I got a call. I'm going to skip over this. This was a special project that I did. But one day I got a call from this gentleman called David Tebow. He had a company called Amtech, and he was out of Portland, actually, Portland, Oregon. And he said he was looking to put in a team together, working from various, all across the country. And he got a contact with this company called FTD. Now, I've never heard of FTD before. I did recognize the logo, but I just didn't, you know, I didn't pay attention to who FTD was. So he basically said to us, well, why don't you, I told him I wasn't really interested because the job would entail literally flying all over North America, but he kind of sold me on it. He asked me, hey, why don't you just fly to Chicago and go into the FTD headquarters and see what we have to offer and then make up your mind from there. So that's exactly what I did. We flew to Chicago in 2005 and I accepted the job. I liked what I had to hear. I was trying to get away from that toxic work environment. And I began I dove into the world of the floor industry. This is how it all started for me. Here's what I did for that. So remember, I was not an FTD employee. I was an MTech employee that had a contract with FTD. So I was basically a consultant. And my job was to fly, to get on a plane every single Sunday, fly anywhere in North America, including Canada. I've been to places I couldn't even pronounce at the time, like Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I didn't know it was a place. Yellowknife. I didn't know that was a place. Like I got to like really like travel. My job was to travel there every single Sunday. I would be in a flower shop in the Monday morning. I would take the computers. I would disconnect all the computers and disconnect the network. I would take everything out of the boxes, the new computers, and then I will install the new Mercury POS, right, which you guys are all familiar with. So the first day I would just begin, I would just train the owner usually first, because you guys need to know the system before the employees know, right? So I would spend the whole day with the owner. Then I would, on Tuesday, I would begin training all the other employees. and also delivery drivers, because there's a delivery driver component to this. And you know, and then Wednesday was a little bit more the same. And then Thursday was the special day. Every single Thursday, I knew what to expect. You know, I must have done like 70 or 80 installs. But when it came to my last day there, I still don't understand why florists did this. But like they I guess they felt comfortable to confining me how bad they were doing. Like they were just telling me how, you know, they're struggling with cash flow. Basically, they were venting. They were saying like it's not as good as the, you know, it's not as good as the good old days. They remember where they used to, you know, own this industry, and now they're just forced to be you know, a small part of a much bigger machine that doesn't really care about them. They're just used as like the last mile type of the transaction. And all of these stories kind of like sounded familiar. Like that's what my dad was complaining. Like it all came back to me from my childhood. And one of the things really stuck out, and that was, you know, my dad is was forced into early retirement because, you know, right now it's pretty common that you see grocery stores or like these little bodegas in gas stations, right? Like that's pretty common now. Well, you know, 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. A gas station was a gas station, and that was all there was. I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but you know, there was a gas station across the street from us. So when from a national company, I think it was Amoco, I believe, and once they put in you know, a grocery store in the gas station directly across from us, my dad was forced into early retirement. He was already in his 70s. It was time to call it. So I was forced to be the main breadwinner for my family. At like 22, I was supporting 6 other people. And so I had a taste of that national company coming in and, you know, stepping all over the small business and just like, you know, not caring about anything and just looking out for itself, right? So I you know, when I was talking to florists, especially on Thursdays, a lot of that sort of like memories came back, you know, a decade later, right? What do they say? Everything is always tied to your childhood somehow, one way or another. So that's how it felt. But I felt not horrible, but I felt empathy because, you know, at one point I've been told, I've never seen this, there were like 50,000 florists, and now it was, at the time it was closer to like 22, and now there's less. And there was these things called order gatherers, and you know, order gatherers are like the worst thing ever. And you know, I was just like, just taking it all in, basically acting as emotional support. But I was young, and I just kind of just listened, and I still don't understand why they, like, almost like if I did 70 installs, 60 of them did this. Like it was consistent. And I don't know, I think it was maybe because they were like, here's a bag of stress, why don't you just take it with you, and I would never want to see this again. But it did happen. It became, I expected it every day. I mean, every Thursday. So I know this by heart, so I'm going ahead of myself here. So I saw the same pattern, right? Like when I saw whereby the national company taking over the grocery store business in my neighborhood, where it's like, hey, there's these national companies, these wire servers, these order gatherers, just basically stomping all over the blue collar worker, you know, the florist, you know, and there was like a similar pattern. So that kind of stuck with me. So after I was an FDD installer for about a year and a half, close to 2 years. And then I kind of got tired of the traveling. A lot of people think it's glamorous, which it is for the first like 60 days, but then you get tired of constantly like being somewhere else in North America. And for some reason, they love sending me to Canada. Not that I have anything against Canada, but like the Canadian taxes are a little bit more complicated than the US taxes. So there was I was one of the few who did well and understood it. So I've been to Edmonton tons of times, Calgary. I've done I think I visited more provinces than I have states, to be honest with you. So I did that. I kind of stopped. I didn't want to go back to the 9 to 5 job, that grinding. I just didn't want to do it. So I needed to like do something else. So I started just helping other businesses. I saved a little bit of money. I had a mortgage to pay at that age, at that early age. So I still had to get my, had to get my shit together because, mortgage is a mortgage. I was still supporting my family. So I was contemplating what I was going to do as a career path. And as I was doing that, I started, I befriended some of the florists that I visited, and I built a relationship with them. So I asked two of them if I can help in any way, how would I help? And both of them said, well, can you help me get more orders somehow? I said, okay, all right, let me see how this works. Just, people think computers, they think everything about a computer, including online marketing, digital, and that's not how it works. It's very different, totally different fields. Just because you're an electrician doesn't mean you know how to pour concrete, for example, right? But like, especially back then, just because you knew computers, they're like, oh, can you help me get more orders? So I was like, okay, let me see what I could do. And then that's where I literally fell in love with the world of SEO. And this is how these wire services and order gatherers were getting these orders. There was this thing called SEO, and SEO back in the day were like this big secret, and I was very enticed to like, it was like, what do you mean I can't know it? Like, now I want it even more, because anything that you wanted to learn, all you need to do is literally pick up a book or go to college or take a class or ask a friend or go to a meetup or whatever. And you just learn it. There's nothing stopping you from learning what you wanted to learn, right? Well, SEO is actually really, really different. It's unique in the way where Google literally hires the world's smartest people to make sure that you don't know how it works. Because if you know how it works, then the algorithm doesn't work. So there's a lot of misinformation. So that I just fell in love with it. I was like, what do you mean I can't know? Now I want to know even more. So I started learning, and then these two flower shops, and I'll tell you guys the name of these flower shops. One of them is still with us. I care for her dearly. Her name is Karen Hickey from Edmonton, Alberta. She owns the Awesome Blossom Flower Shop. She was the first person to give me an opportunity. And the other one was Booth Flower Shop, which he's no longer in business. He went into the real estate, but he was with us for at least 8-9 years before he decided to change careers. But those two shops actually paved the way. In the meantime, Ken and I kept in touch, but we really didn't see each other that much. Only with like, happy hour when somebody else was leaving at the old company, because we still had that brotherhood, So I was trying to figure out, well, how do order gatherers do it? These guys are getting orders. How are they getting orders? So, one thing led to another, and I started learning SEO. And then I apply my what I've learned. I remember emailing Teleflora and emailing FTD, because Karen had a Teleflora website and Chris had an FTD website. And I was, instructing them, hey, change the title tag to this, or let's add this. And they would take forever to make any changes. And some of the changes they didn't want to make, and they were, it wasn't their priority. Let's just say that. But like Karen was, I think, like on page 17 when we first started, in terms of like a bunch of keywords for her area. And now we was getting to page 3, and then page 2, and then finally page 1. And it was exciting. She was getting orders. So was Chris. Chris is actually in Queens, New York, which I don't know if you guys know anything about New York City, but it's 5 boroughs and it's huge, right? There's Staten Island, there's Manhattan, there's Brooklyn, Queens, and Bronx. And he's in Queens. And the best keywords for New York City is actually flower delivery NYC. Because us New Yorkers, we just type NYC. We're too lazy to type New York. Like, nobody says that in New York. It's NYC. So I had, and this was amazing. I had Chris ranking on the first page on Google for New York City keywords when he was all the way in Queens, and people are like, "What's happening? How is he? How wholesalers talk. I don't have to tell you guys." They were trying to figure out like how's this guy doing that. Anyway, long story short, I was I was gaining confidence. I had, Karen and Chris were doing well. And then I tried to actually ask other florists if they would give me an opportunity and hire me. But I got kicked. In the Northeast, it's tough to be an entrepreneur on your own, especially as a young kid, because I got thrown out of so many flower shops. They're like, yeah, right, kid. 10 people before you said the exact same thing, and 10 people after you leave them say the same thing. It's like everybody's a guru. And I was like, but I can do it, whatever. And I was just striking out, and it just, sales wasn't my strong suit, so I couldn't sell myself. But I knew the results I was getting, right? So the one thing with SEO is that there's so much secrecy, right? And if somebody figures out like a hole in the algorithm, they have to stay shut. Like they can't just blast it out, because if they say something on a meet, not on a meetup, but like on the online, if Google finds out like, they figured this hole out, they're gonna plug it, and then that doesn't work, and then your livelihood is at stake now. So nobody was saying anything. So the only way to get really information is offline. So I started going to these meetups, and these meetups are like, I don't have to tell you guys, is, people who have a particular subject. They have meetups about vampires. Don't even ask what that is, but like people that hunt vampires meet up or whatever. But they have a meetup about SEO. So we went to I went to a few SEO meetups in New York City. But I was hungry for more information, because SEO is kind of like a game where what you know today may not work tomorrow. Like there's no guarantees. So I was, it was like it's a marathon race, right? It's not a sprint. So I was able to get more SEO knowledge by going to places like out of my city. New York City is a pretty big area, but I ended up going to Boston. And this is like the first and only time I actually received a standing ovation for no apparent reason. So I asked my buddy of mine if he can go with me to, his name was George, if he can go with me to this meetup in Boston, which is 4 hours away from New York City, because they were having an SEO meetup there that was really good. So I wanted to go. And so I went, and we got there late. And the minute I went in, this was a lounge, and there was like 20 people there. And the person who was hosting the meetup had an easel with a marker, and he basically looked at me as I came in. George is behind me, and he just stops. He's like, "Oh my God, he showed up!" And everybody stands up and starts applauding. And I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. Is this a prank? Like, I don't understand. And George is like, "Hey, do you know these guys?" Like, I have no idea. And I just sat down, and he's like, you have no idea why we're clapping. I was like, no, what's going on? Like, I'm in back. I don't know what to think. I'm brown, but I was blushing. I was turned red. I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, you drove here from New York City? I was like, yeah. He's like, you drove 4 hours to meet with us in this. And I was like, yes. He's like, we were just debating. This got to be a mistake. There's no way this guy's driving 4 hours for a 1 hour meetup just to go back home. So he was basically, he was very appreciative that I had gone all that way just for his little meetup, and he was cool about it. So we had a good time, and I learned a few tricks in there. So it was worth going. So fast forward to 2007. I have two or three shops. Trying to make it on my own. I still meeting with Ken here and there, but we're not business partners. He had left BMP. He started his own development company with a buddy of his. Named Nick. And with every sort of like success story, there's always like a light bulb moment. And this is the light bulb moment for me. It was February 10th, 2007. And that's when I got the call. I don't have to explain to you guys, like, this is how phones used to look like, right? Because when new employees now, they're like, yeah, that's how phones used to look like. These are younger kids. Mm-hmm. So when I got a call around 7 a.m. and I was still sleeping, the phone rang and it woke me up, and I just picked up and I just said hello. And it was a woman on the other line, and she was crying. And she's like, Joe, make it stop. And I'm like, I just looked at like, who is it? Like, and I recognized the area code to 780, which is Edmonton. So I said, Karen? And she's like, just crying. She's like, you need to make it stop. I'm like, make what stop? Like, do you want me to call the police? What's wrong? What's going on? I don't know what's happening. Like, I'm just waking up. I'm not even all there, you know? And she's like, they're going to yell at me. They're going to yell at me. I'm like, who's going to yell at you? And eventually she come down, we talked, I told her what to do. This is what happened. She walks into the shop at 5 a.m. because it's 4 days before Valentine's. And I have to tell you guys how busy of a day that week is. And she came in, she looked at the printer, and the printer was asking for more paper because all of these orders had printed out. And she got happy. She's like, oh, right, this is awesome. Online marketing is working, like this is great. She put in a whole bunch of paper on the printer, took the orders out, went to do something else. And then she hears the printer beeping again, and it's out of paper. She comes back, and there's another stack of orders, and she freaks out. She literally asks herself, who is doing this to me? Like, she just needed somebody to like, so Joe's doing this to me. Let me call you. So that was the phone call. So what she was doing was basically, she was envisioning, she didn't buy enough flowers. She didn't have enough designers for all these orders. She was already envisioning, you know, all these guys yelling at her because she didn't deliver the flowers, because there's just no way that she didn't buy it. She didn't prepare for the plethora of orders that she got. She got hundreds of orders she didn't even expect, right? And then she was trying to tell me she actually told me, guys, I know she gets embarrassed by this a little bit, but we joked around. She actually told me, Joe, turn Google off. I'm like, I can't turn Google off. That's not how that works. Like, you need to. So I just told her, listen, you need to call Teleflora and disable the dates. This is good. She could have done it on her own. She was just freaking out and could not think, you know. And I was just like, holy shit, like, really? Like, this thing works that well? Like, I was just amazed. And I'll tell you guys the difference between a Canadian shop and like a New York shop. Chris, that day, like a few hours later, called me up, and the same thing happened to him, but the response was very different. The response was, he calls me up, he goes like, Joe, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. Click. Like, I didn't answer anything. I was like, wait, what? It was like, so he was just like, I don't care how this is getting done. I'm gonna lift this up, and I'm gonna make these orders happen somehow. So he was like hustling, like he just took it over. And that's when I was just realized, I was like, whoa, this isn't like I'm just helping a few friends out. This is a real impact. And then I just put it all together. I'm like, whoa, imagine. I was just asking myself, like, wait a second. All these florists are struggling simply because what the SEO work that I did wasn't even that hard. If you know, obviously, you know, it's all about knowledge, but it's like all these, and then I started remembering all these people that were suffering and complaining and losing their livelihood and literally like going through all this hardship. And all I did was like change the title tag. I'm like, I gotta do something about it. I have to spread the word. You know, there's a way out. There's a way where you can take back the end of this. Like, so that sort of motivated me. And then I started, like, you know, after Valentine's Day, of course, I started trying to get attempting to get new clients. But again, New York City is a tough place to try to get anything new. And I was like, but I was so convinced, and especially after that call, you know, the light bulb moment, I felt, you know, I had a chip on my shoulder, right? Because I was not going to be kicked out of another flower shop, because I know that I make a difference. I know this stuff works, and I'm 100% confident. So I made my offer to a few more shops, and I was able to get them on board. And here's the difference. The reason I was able to get them on board was they still didn't give me a shot. They still didn't want to pay me up front. They didn't want to hire me. But I made them an offer they couldn't refuse. And here was the offer. I said, okay, why don't I do all the work first? work with your service provider, which is, you know, FD, Teleflor, or whomever, and I'll get you the orders. We will compare statements, and then you only pay me for orders that you get in addition to like whatever the baseline was. And they were like, go knock yourself out. Like, sure, you know, it's free work, right? It's like, all right, yeah, go prove yourself. And like, I was able to get like 3 or 4 more shops that way. So now I had like a total of around 5 shops. And that's how our entire business model was actually formed. It wasn't formed because I had this brilliant, it was formed out of necessity. It's like, I needed to like convince these people that to give me a chance, and they would only give me a chance if I could prove myself. So that's why the performance-based business model that we use today, that's where it came from, right? It's quite the journey for sure. So like, I had like 5 clients, 5 flower shops, 5 floors, my 2 original ones, which was Karen and Chris, and then a couple of other shops in New York City. And then, but you guys are gonna laugh at this, but like, it doesn't matter how well you do for someone, eventually everyone gets used to it and they want to know what's next, right? So it didn't matter, like they were getting, everyone adjusted, they got more designers, they got more delivery drivers, and even Karen and Chris, they're like, all right, Joe, what's next? I'm like, what do you mean what's next? I got you, like, you're like the first, you're ranking number 1 for your area. There's nothing else left. There's nothing, you just need to maintain it. And they're like, oh, there's gotta be something else. And I was like, all right, let's see. Then I started sort of getting into, so just like I fell in love with the world of SEO, I fell in love with the world of CRO. And CRO stands for conversion rate optimization. And this is like the first epiphany I had was when Karen gave me that call. But I would say that this is a close second, because I started sort of learning analytics and figuring out like, okay, well, I'm getting a ton of people to your site. Why aren't they buying? So that's when I discovered like, all right, there's this thing called a conversion rate, which basically how many people actually complete the process, how many people got there. Everyone and their mother things like, oh, we just need to throw more money on marketing, more money. We need more people. More. And actually, no, you don't need anything more. What you need is to convert more. And there, you know, Chris had an FD site, and those sites were the worst. That's when I'm like, wait a minute, you're getting hundreds of orders only and at a 2% conversion rate, like a 2.5 or something like that. I was like, that's horrible. Like, why does the average conversion? I started researching that and understanding that. And I fell in love with that. I was a horrible student. I don't learn by, structured manner. I kind of learn on my own by doing, by trying, visual spatial learner. So I needed to play around with the websites to figure out how can I figure it out? How can I make, increase this conversion rate? There was one problem with that, and that is, the wire services don't allow you to touch the system. It's not a customizable site, You can't change this, you can't change that. So I asked Chris if it was okay if I could just build him a website. And he said, absolutely, let's try that. The only problem was I'm not a developer. I can't write a lick of code. It's not what I do. So I asked, I hired somebody and I created a website, and this website was actually a little bit ugly now that I look back at it, but it started converting at 6%. And so now with the exact same amount of traffic, Chris was literally generating 3 times the amount of orders, right? And all we did was change the way the website worked. And CRO has a lot to do with like behavioral economics and psychology and how people behave online and bounce rates and all this other technical mumbo jumbo that I won't put you guys through. But psychology is a huge part of it. And I really loved it. I really fell in love with that. And I wanted to do more. But, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. I just talked about this. So I learned CRO for sure, which is conversion rate optimization. This is I designed a similar website like this. This wasn't it, but it was converting at 6%. So now I had a formula. I knew what to do, but I had a scaling problem. I couldn't, I'm not in sales. I couldn't convince enough shops to come on board. Throughout all this time, I wasn't making enough money to be able to support my family and pay the mortgage. So I still had to do work on the side. And part of that work was I happened to know a lot of friends of mine were in the taxi business and mechanic business. So they would ask me to come and fix their computers in their shops and this and that. And I had a friend of mine, Ali, he had a shop. And this is the shop right here on 47th Street, Manhattan, in Hell's Kitchen. And this was, you know, he had the entire building, this place here. And he asked me to fix a computer for him, and I did. And I noticed that he wasn't actually using an office. And I said, hey, can I just hang out here and work out of this office if you're not using it? And he said, sure, as long as you fix my computers for free, it's yours. So I'm like, all right. So I started working from that office. So now I had a Manhattan address as a business and a young guy. That's like really impressive, you know? And I kept in touch with Ken, and Ken said, like, you know, his business partner had left him. He decided to go back to school. And I said, hey, I have a business. I have an office in the city. Why don't you come and pay me a visit? So he did. And he only went there once because he hated it. I mean, this place was, let's face it, it was a dump. It's a mechanic shop in the city. You know, people are cursing. There's fights in the streets. This is Manhattan. It's loud. It's energy. It's crazy. It's chaotic. You know, there's oil everywhere. Like, this is not an office space, okay? So he never went back, but he knew that I wanted to have an office. So, and the reason that's relevant to the story is because that's when I got the second call from Ken. Ken, a few months later, asked me, hey, Joe, there's this place called Sunshine Suites. And this is before co-working spaces became big. Right now they're everywhere, but like before, you know, it was a new thing, right? And he said to me, like, hey, there's these spaces where you actually can rent a cubicle, and you get your mail there, you get a 212 phone number, which is the city, and it's a big deal in business. You even get a receptionist, but the receptionist is for everyone, but it's still, you know, and do you want to go with me to check it out? And that's what I did. So I went to check it out with him, and this is actually the place. So this is our floor at the time, and the way it works is like you actually rent the desk, not the cubicle. And per cubicle, there's 2 desks. Okay, so so we were talking to the owner, and we liked it, and he asked us, hey, are you guys gonna take it? And we said yes, but under one condition. And he said, what's that? We said, well, we would take it, but only if we could sit next to each other, even though we have different businesses. Like, I'm dealing with florists, he's dealing with developing programs and websites for other people, other businesses. And he said, sure. So we both were there. So we moved in there January 2nd, 2008. And it took us 2 weeks to figure out that maybe we should work together. So we were completely separate businesses. And Kenny hates when I tell people this story, but it did happen. He asked me if, what is this thing that you're doing with florists? I'm like, oh, you know, I try to explain it. And I remember getting frustrated with him in the whiteboard because he couldn't grasp, and he's a smart guy, but he couldn't grasp the concept of a wire order. He's like, well, why do they get 7%? I'm like, because that's the way it is, you know? And he's like, but why doesn't just the florists just go directly? I'm like, because they need the network. Like, he was just intrigued by it. He didn't understand it. And he's like, do you really think you can make a difference? And then he saw this, and I created a spreadsheet for him. And I was like, this is how much the order, how much an average order is, and this is how much the florist gets, and this is how much the wire service gets. And if we do this, this is what it would look like. And he's like, let me see that. And he's looking at the spreadsheet, and he looks at me, he looks back. He does it several times before he asks me, do you want me to help you with this? And I was just like, maybe. What are we talking about here? He's like, well, he's a developer. I was a designer / marketer, and it was like a perfect marriage. Like, I can't do what he can do, and I need him to do the things that I do, and he needs me to do the things that I know how to do. So it took us 2 weeks to figure out, like, maybe we should work together, but it was completely by accident. We did not plan this whatsoever. And just to give you a picture, that's Ken. That's back into 2008. this is one side of the cubicle. If you could see there's a design there that we had. This is me. As you can see, it's May 2008. I think it's Mother's Day around here. That's where I was crossing off the days till Mother's Day. I'm still reading the newspaper as I was when I was like 12. And yeah, like if you see this line here, that's my side of the cubicle and that's his side of the cubicle. But it took us like literally 2 weeks to figure out, like, you know what, let's work together on this thing. And here we are today. So that's the story, guys. What did you guys think? Do you guys have any questions? Did anything surprise you? Did you know some of this stuff?
I mean, I for one didn't know. I only heard that you guys used to work for FTD and then decided to go off on your own. So it was not even close to what happened. But that what an amazing story. What an amazing story. You should be really proud of yourself. And I thank God because
a perfect match.
It's amazing what you do to flower shops. Like my business has doubled, almost tripled sometimes, some months, and it's like, what the hell? It's incredible.
Right. I mean, I was looking at today, my thing, and it's like I was comparing to last September. The whole September, I am $300 or $400 more than the whole month last year, September. And we're not even at the end of the month yet. And I even have more count numbers of orders than I did last year. So it's gone up real well every year.
I'm like double and a half of my sales from last year. It's mind-boggling.